Hello, everyone. Welcome. Welcome back to those of you who were with us yesterday. All right, everyone is pouring in. It's so good to see the numbers go up and the names pop up. Hello and welcome to our University of Michigan alumni and friends. My name is Kiara Trotter, Director of Alumni Career and Education for your Alumni Association, and I use she, her pronouns. We're excited and grateful to have Dr. Jennifer Nash with us as we explore today's topic, strategic networking. Today's mini webinar is part of a series designed to support those embarking on a job search, whether expected or unexpected. You can find this week's full lineup and additional job search resources on our website, which will likely pop up in the chat. And please feel free to share these links and our resources with your network so that we all as a community can support as many people as possible. Before we start, please note that this webinar is being recorded and the recording will be shared in a follow-up email. Please submit your questions using the Q&A feature in your toolbar, and the chat is open for you to engage with other participants during this session. Since this mini webinar is only 30 minutes, we may not get to all of your questions, but please submit them anyway, and we'll do our best to address them here in the follow-up information that we'll share with you early next week or in our live Q&A session, which will be this Friday at 12 o'clock. All right, so now a little bit about today's presenter. Jennifer Nash, PhD, MBA, PCC, is an executive advisor, leadership expert, consultant, and MG 100 executive coach to Fortune 500 organizations such as Google, Ford, ExxonMobil, JP Morgan, IBM, Boeing, and Verizon. She is founder and CEO of Jennifer Nash Coaching and Consulting, helping successful leaders deliver exceptional results. Jennifer's 25-year resume includes serving in executive and leadership roles at Deloitte Consulting and Ford Motor Company, and as adjunct professor at this University of Michigan. She contributes to Harvard Business Review, has presented her research at Columbia University, and is a Harvard McLean Institute of Coaching Fellow. Jennifer is the best-selling author of Be Human, Lead Human, a 14-time award-winning leadership book designed to elevate leadership and communication skills and enhance individual and organizational effectiveness. So if all of this didn't already say it, we have the best with you today. So I'll go ahead and turn things over to Dr. Nash. Thank you.
Oh, thank you so much, Kara, and welcome everybody. I'm so excited to be here today and talk about strategic networking with all of our amazing Michigan alumni. So I see people are popping in the chat where you're calling in from. We've got Lindsay from Silver Spring, Maryland, and we have Aaron coming in from Fort Collins, and we have someone else who is also in Ohio. But no worries, they are a Wolverine fan. So welcome everybody. Let us know where you're calling in from, and we encourage you also to stay to the end of the session because we have a couple special bonuses and surprises for those of you who are giving us your time and joining live today. So let's dive in. Let's go to the next slide, please. So you might have heard the phrase, it's not who you know, it's not what you know, it's who you know. And I would actually take that one step further. It's not only who you know, but it's who knows you. And the more people that you know, and the more people who know you, create a lot of possibilities and open doors that you didn't even know existed. And this is particularly important when you're trying to transition industries. So let's talk about some of these doors. These doors can look like access to job opportunities. They can look like creating additional business contacts and connections. It can be gaining fresh ideas and career advice. It can be building confidence and social capital within your current organization. It can even be expanding visibility in your industry. So strategic networking is really important and it matters. And this is the topic of our conversation today. Next slide, please. Many of the clients I work with, they don't like networking. And I always find that it's helpful to know what is stopping them from networking so that they can start progressing their job search or climbing the ladder. So I want to know from you right now, what is getting in the way of your networking efforts? So I'd invite you to scan that QR code that you see on the screen right now, and it's going to take you to a Mentimeter poll. And you can pick your choice of options there from 1 to 9. You can pick actually more than one. And let's see what we're getting from people as you are submitting your answers. If you have trouble with the Mentimeter poll and it's not working, feel free to go ahead and pop a number into the chat, and Kira will help us see what people are calling out. So we'll give that a minute to see what's coming in. And we've got Cheryl and Charlotte. Welcome, Cheryl. And Samantha is here from Washington, D.C. Hey, Samantha. We've got Victoria asking to send the link in the chat for the Mentimeter poll. Deanna, welcome. She's calling in from Chicago. All right. Can we go to the next slide, please, and see if the Mentimeter poll is populating? Oh, excellent. Yeah. Okay, so it looks like we've got a lot of people saying, oh my gosh, it feels overwhelming. Um, what else do we have? So networking, it feels icky. Yeah, that's typically one that is really high up on the list. Um, Also, people are saying, oh yeah, we don't know what to say or we don't know how to do it. Don't like calling people. That one comes up quite frequently as well. Some people are concerned that people won't want to talk to me if they call them. Or people are concerned that maybe there's a fear of wasting people's time. That's coming up as one of the top ones right now. There's also a question coming in about, how do you find out who to reach out to? That is something we're going to talk about later on in the presentation. So yeah, so we have quite a few here coming in. So these are all very common, and it feels overwhelming. It looks like it's getting the most response. And so part of what we want to do today with this presentation is give you a process and a structure for how we can help you reduce the overwhelm and execute an effective strategic networking strategy. So let's go to the next slide, please. So now that we know where we're starting from, let's look at the solutions to some of these concerns. And I call this framework the 3 E's of strategic networking. And if you're not doing these 3 things regularly, there's no time like the present to start. Next slide, please. So the first E stands for enhance. And this step involves actions to strengthen and refine your existing network. So for example, you need to review and update your contact lists. How old are they? And do you have them all over the place? You probably have them in LinkedIn, you have them in a phone, you have them in email, maybe old email accounts, current email accounts. You may have them across other social media platforms than LinkedIn. And so ideally, you want to just get all of that into one document so it's easier to track. And one of our bonuses today is going to help you do that. The second step that you want to do for enhancing your network is to optimize your network. And here is where you're going to get a little bit ruthless, right? So you want to understand how strong are these relationships for you? In other words, who should stay in the network, who maybe you need to cut, who you want to reconnect with, right? And all of the answers to those questions depend on what your ultimate goal is and where you're trying to get. So optimizing your network is the second step in enhancing your network. And then the third step in enhancing your network is one that people typically don't do because it feels overwhelming to them, right? You want to nurture those relationships before you need them. And the best time to build the relationship is before you need it. So, in other words, this is something that you should be doing all the time, consistently throughout your professional career, not just when you're looking to change jobs. So your call to action here is identify and reach out to 3 contacts that you haven't spoken to in 6 months. Next slide, please. All right, the second E stands for expand. So expand involves in identifying and connecting with new people. So places that you can look include identifying any networking opportunities. Maybe you have an alumni group in your area that you could reach out and connect with and get involved in some of their activities. Maybe you have a professional association like Toastmasters or Rotary or some type of volunteer organization that you work with. Maybe there are some social events that are happening in your town that would introduce you to new people that maybe you don't know yet. And maybe also there's some social media or online forums that would be helpful for you to find some people that are like-minded and have common goals and objectives. Another place you can look is to engage with some people at conferences and industry events. So if you're not developing yourself professionally, this is an opportunity for you also to focus on your professional growth and at the same time build your network. So your call to action here is to join one new LinkedIn group or attend an in-person industry or company event this month. Next slide, please. So the third E stands for energize. And this step involves focusing on maintaining relationships and keeping them active. And I touched on this earlier where, we tend to let our networks sort of wither on the vine and die because we're not giving them that consistent TLC. And so here's a couple ways to do that. So number one, you want to stay in touch regularly. And the key here is that you reach out when, and especially when you don't need anything. So an easy way to do this is through LinkedIn, right? They give you reminders about people's birthdays or people's work anniversaries. And, this is one of the pro tips for introverts, right? If you don't like calling people to catch up with them on the phone, this is a really easy way to stay in touch and stay top of mind with people without having to pick up the phone. And it alleviates that anxiety of a phone call. The second way that you can energize and maintain the relationships is to think about what is it that you can offer of value to that relationship and network before you ask for a favor. And so many of you on the poll mentioned that, networking feels icky, right? Like it feels transactional. I don't like it. And so a pro tip here is when you think about what you have to offer and you can give the other person, that alleviates the icky feeling that you have. So you may think, well, what do I have to offer of value? I'm the person that needs something here. Well, you have a lot to offer of value. You may offer someone, a listening ear because they're going through something difficult and they just need to talk with someone. You may offer them a connection that you have in your network that could be very helpful to them. You may offer them a different perspective on something and help broaden their aperture to see that there are different possibilities. So there's many different ways that you can offer value. It's not just in a transactional type of space. So offering value is the best way to remove that icky feeling. The third step here in Energize is to plan ahead. And so a lot of you mentioned, on the poll, I don't know what to talk about, or I don't know what to say, or I'm afraid people won't want to talk to me. And so here's a pro tip for you. Most people love to talk about themselves. So what you can do before you go to a networking event, or before you schedule a call with someone, or before you know that you're going to be interacting with someone that you need to build a relationship with, you can plan ahead and you can prepare 3 questions and 3 talking points before you go to that event or before you get on that call. This will help you feel prepared, and that alleviates the anxiety about reaching out and not knowing what to say. So your call to action here is to send a follow-up message to someone that you met recently and send them some kind of helpful resource. This is one of my favorite ways to add value. So I am constantly on the lookout for, different kinds of research articles or different news flash things about something that we talked about in that conversation. And then I will follow up that conversation with someone and say, hey, this came across my desk today. I was thinking about you because of our conversation, and I thought you might find some value in it, or I thought this might be of interest to you. So that is your call to action. Send a follow-up message to someone you met recently with a helpful resource. All right, so these 3 steps: enhance, expand, and energize. Your mission, if you choose to accept it, is number 1, to enhance your network. You're going to do a network audit. So review and update your LinkedIn connections and phone contacts. Number 2, to expand your network, you're going to grow it with intention. So you're going to join one new networking group or attend an industry event in the next 30 days. And number 3, to energize your network, you're going to engage with it actively. So reach out to 3 people this week and either send them an article based on a conversation that you had with them, or just wish them a happy birthday on LinkedIn, right? Stay top of mind. Next slide, please. All right, so we really appreciate you attending live today and giving us your time, and we wanted to show our gratitude. So we have two special bonuses to offer you. If this all feels really overwhelming, and I know this is a lot of information condensed into a very small amount of time, this bonus is going to make your life much easier. So my team and I have created a free professional networking tracker for you to download and use to track all of your strategic networking efforts. You can scan that QR code number 1 to get your tracker. The second bonus is if you found the content in this session helpful and you'd really like a more personalized one-on-one session, we have a fantastic discount available for the first 25 people to show up. Use code GOBLUE3425, which is the code you see under the QR code number 2, to get your 50% discount. But it's only available to the first 25 of U of M alumni who sign up. So scan that code and act now if you want to take advantage of that discount. And now we're going to turn it back over to Kira for the Q&A part of the session today. So Kira, what questions do we have coming in?
Awesome. And everyone, please feel free to put your questions in the Q&A. So first, you already mentioned a little bit about this, but can you talk a little bit more about those tips for introverts who might be particularly not interested, myself included, in doing some of this networking? What else can you share with us to help us out?
Yes. So, introverts are unique in this way, and that we have some superpowers when it comes to building relationships and building networks. We just don't think of it that way. Introverts like to go deep and they like to have conversations one on one. So, first and foremost, that is a way that as an introvert, you can show up at your best, right? Typically, introverts don't like to have conversations with large groups of people. And so, this is an opportunity to narrow that down and realize that, oh, it's a conversation with one other person. So, that helps manage that maybe nervousness or apprehension about, oh my gosh, I have to reach out to somebody. The second thing that you can do is, like I mentioned earlier, you have a superpower when it comes to going deep in information and liking to dig into the details and figure out things. And so when you are reaching out to add value to someone, you can use that superpower to share something with them that maybe they haven't had time to research, or they're just not that interested in researching it. They just want the top level view. So you can dig out that article, you can read through it, pick out one key bullet point and summarize that for them in the email that you send them with a link to the article, right? That's another way that helps. Um, when you are thinking about, oh my gosh, I don't know if they want to talk to me, or I don't know if, they'll be interested in what I have to say. Um, know that your perspective as an introvert, you look at things very differently than extroverts do. And so you bring a unique perspective, and that's one that needs to be heard. Your voice needs to be heard in that way. So when you're worried about not adding value, or you're worried about they don't want to speak to you, that is not the case at all. You bring a very unique perspective that needs to be heard. So I want you to know that. There is also a book called Quiet, The Power of Introverts in a World That Won't Stop Talking by Susan Cain. And I would strongly recommend that if you haven't picked up a copy of that book, to take a look at it. It was life-changing for me as an introvert, and I think that it will help you as well on this journey for networking.
Awesome. Thank you. All right,
Mhm.
we had a few more questions come in. The next one that we'll tackle is, do you have any advice for people who identify as neurodivergent as they're networking?
Oh, that's interesting. So, for the person who's neurodivergent, I would want to better understand what is getting in their way of networking, right? So maybe it was something on the poll that we put up, and maybe it's not. And so, in the absence of that data, I wouldn't want to give some guidance that is in the wrong direction. So I would encourage that person to follow up with me after the session and send a direct question, and I'm happy to answer that offline.
Awesome. Thank you. Next question. What are your best tips for recent graduates to establish or expand their networks?
Yeah, that's a great question, and one I get quite often. So, if you're a recent graduate, and I'm assuming that maybe you don't have a job yet, you're in the job market right now, one of the best places to leverage is your alumni network. So, all of us here on the call, we're U of M alumni. We want to help. So if there is somebody that you reach out to and you say, look, I'm a recent grad, I'm a U of M alumni, I'm looking for maybe just a quick conversation so I can understand better about what you do and learn more about your job and see if the company that you're working for might be a good fit for me. Would you have 5 minutes? And I think that's also one of the keys, right? When you're reaching out to someone and asking them for some time, don't ask for an hour. That's not going to go over well. But if you emphasize that it's, a very brief, quick conversation, 5, 15 minutes long, that will get you a much more higher probability of, having that accepted. And like I said, I have rarely found that when I reach out to a U of M alumni and ask them for support in some way, they say no. I don't even know that it's happened once. So know that when you reach out to your U of M alumni network, that's going to be helpful. The other thing that you can be doing is, like I mentioned earlier, if you are in a particular industry or you're in a particular area of interest, look to see where the professional groups are that would be helpful for you, right? Maybe you're an engineer, so maybe you're looking to join the automotive industry. So maybe you want to join the Society of Automotive Engineers and see if there are people there that you can network with. Maybe you're looking at being in, the communications field. And so maybe you'd want to be interested in looking at Toastmasters to build some network. Um, the other thing that I recommend as a recent grad, when you're looking for a job, tell everyone you know that you're looking for a job. Tell your friends, tell your family, tell your people in your religious, space if you choose to practice. Tell your doctors, tell your dentist, tell your hairdresser, tell people who you interact with on a daily basis, because you never know who has information about a particular job that you might be interested in. So those are several ways that when you're a recent grad, you can start that networking process and start to grow that professional network if you're not already in a company.
Awesome. Thank you. And to everyone who is on the call, Brooklyn is putting some resources in the chat. And one of the ones that she's sharing is a past webinar of ours called Approaching Work with a Neuro Inclusive Lens. Okay, so another question. Do you have any resources for talking points that can help people who feel a bit anxious when they're preparing for and participating in one of these networking conversations?
Yes, I just saw that question come in from Cynthia. Thank you, Cynthia. So, we talked earlier in the conversation about how when you are preparing to interact with someone, that you think about the talking points you want to have, right? So I always find it very helpful to have three, right? So the first one is the purpose. Why am I meeting? What is the purpose of our meeting? What is the desired outcome that I want to have from this meeting? So be very clear about that with the person when you're asking them for their time. Say something like, um, I'm a new grad and I am looking to grow my network with people in the manufacturing industry, for example. Would you be open to a quick conversation? Right. So that's one way that you can prepare a talking point. The second way that you can prepare a talking point is to think about, what is it that you want to know from this person, right? What do you want to walk away from the conversation with? So think about where you're at today and what you want to know or what you need to know going forward. That will help you prepare that second talking point. And then the third talking point, and this is also a pro tip that I like to give for people. Every time you meet with someone and every time you have a conversation with someone, ask them, who else do you think I should know? Who else do you think that I should speak with? And that creates this like snowball effect because it starts to grow your network organically. Because if you're talking with them about something and they say, oh, yeah, well, this person would be great for you to speak with as well, that already creates a warm connection for you. And for the person who is an introvert that asked the question too, when you have a warm connection to someone, that someone is introducing you, it alleviates some of that anxiety as well because you're not reaching out with a cold call. You're getting an introduction from someone else that they already trust. So that's a fantastic way to also not only help you as an introvert, but also give you a talking point when you meet with that new person that they've referred you to, because you can then start the conversation out by saying, oh, well, I was talking with Matt and he suggested that I speak with you because of X, Y, and Z. So it gives you a very nice transition into that conversation with a new person. I hope that's helpful, Cynthia.
Perfect. Thank you. Is there anything different that you recommend for those of us that are later in our careers and are making a change? Is there anything different about this approach, or is it fairly similar?
I would say it's fairly similar. I think, your network as you, grow in your career, obviously it gets bigger. But I think the approach is similar, right? I mean, if you've got a list of contacts that's 10 years old and you haven't reached out to the people, in 10 years, that's not going to be very helpful for you, regardless of, where you're at in your career. So making sure that you nurture those relationships and that you maintain those connections regularly makes it much easier when you find yourself in need of reaching out, for something else. So I wouldn't say that there's a huge amount of difference with the networking part of this. The conversations themselves may change, but the actual expand, energize, and enhance, that part won't change.
Great. And we have time for a couple more questions. Thank you, everyone, for submitting these. What are some common mistakes you see people make when networking, and how would you recommend they avoid them?
Yeah. So one of the common mistakes I see, and I mentioned this earlier, is that people will ask for too much time, right? They'll ask for a half hour, they'll ask for an hour. That is, people are busy. And so you want to make sure that you are asking for something that feels manageable, and that also doesn't feel like it's taking it, or the other person doesn't feel like they're being taken advantage of. So for example, I get a lot of requests, oh, I just want to pick your brain, and then they ask for an hour-long conversation. Well, here's my Venmo, right? If you want that, we're gonna structure that a different way. But if you just want 5 minutes, sure, I can give you 5 minutes. That's no problem. So that's one mistake that I see. A second mistake that I see is, like I mentioned before, not nurturing the relationships that you do have. And the best time to build the relationships is before you need them. A mistake I see is that people will try to start networking when they need those relationships right away, as opposed to networking earlier in the process when, they're just there and adding value and adding value. It's like you're putting deposits into your bank account, right? And then at some point you're going to need to take a few out. But when there isn't anything in there and you try to take something out, it's a little bit more difficult. So that's the second mistake I see. The third mistake I see is, not being prepared when you go to that conversation or when you go to that interaction. And so the talking points and the preparation and planning ahead, like I mentioned earlier, will alleviate, that issue.
Great, thank you.
Mhm.
We have time for one more question. And for some of the other questions that we're not going to get to, I recommend taking a look at some of the resources that Brooklyn has shared in the chat. And early next week, we will share an email with all of these resources. So please stay tuned for that. Last question. One of my issues is that I don't know what type of job I want, particularly because my sector has been completely decimated. Should we
Mhm.
already know what types of jobs we're looking for before we do these networking meetings?
That's a great question. And so, for those of you on the call whose jobs have been decimated by what's happening in the federal government, my heart goes out to you. I'm here to support you. Know that you are not alone, and that you will get through. We will get through this together. If you don't know what kind of job you want at this point, there may be a couple things that would be helpful. First and foremost, you've just gone through a loss, right? Change creates loss. And when you have a loss, sometimes it's helpful to process that through grief. So you may find that in order for you to gain more clarity about what kind of job you want, you need to go through that grieving process of letting go of what was. And that will help clear the air for you. That's the first suggestion I have for you. The second suggestion I have is, once you've gone through that process, then I would say now you're in a place where you can sit down and make a pros and cons list. What did you love about the job that you had? What did you like about it? What were your strengths? What did you enjoy doing? And then think about the things that you didn't like, right? Put those in the cons list. So you have a very clear picture of, what worked well and what didn't work well. And then I would say use a tool like Career Leader, which the university offers at a discount through the Alumni Association, if you're a member, um, and see where your strengths lie, right? And combine those strengths with what you love to do, not what you're good at. Because if you combine them with what you're good at, oftentimes we fall into the trap of, I'm doing something because I am good at it, not because I love it. And that's where we get burned out. So making sure that you're aligning what you love to do with the strengths that you have is also in the next step in that phase. And the third step I would say is take a look internally before you start looking externally. And what I mean by that is use the values that you have for your life to guide the decision making that you're going to have for your career. How do you make decisions and what do you prioritize, right? Is autonomy important to you? Is security and stability important to you? What are the things that you are prioritizing on your list that you are going to be looking for in a job? And I would say once you've done those three things, then you'll be ready to start looking for different types of jobs that will combine the strengths that you have with the things that you love to do.
Thank you so much, Jennifer. And to everyone who is still on the call, thank you for being here. It is truly an honor to be able to be with you and support you during this time. And thank you for supporting each other as well. All right, so let's express our gratitude to Dr. Jennifer Nash for joining us today. You're welcome to give the thumbs up and the claps and the hearts and all of the things. Please feel free to reach out to her through LinkedIn, her email, and her website. Again, we'll share all of this information with you in a follow-up email next week. We're truly thankful, Dr. Nash, for your valuable time, expertise, and your contributions to the University of Michigan at this critical time. And as a reminder, a recording of today's session will be sent as a follow-up early next week. And I do want to add this additional reminder, the majority of our resources are completely free. Everything that we can offer for free, we do offer for free. So please feel free to take a look at our website because many of the things we have to offer are there on demand, whether it's 2 o'clock in the afternoon or 2 o'clock in the morning. All right, so please also share your feedback with us. We pay close attention to your feedback and we actually use it. For those of you who are going to join us for the rest of the series, we'll see you tomorrow or the next day or the next day. Otherwise, thank you so much to everyone here and go blue.
Go Blue!